Please give a welcome to the Ambassador of India to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, officially, Mr. Vinu Rajamoni.
Mr. Rajendra Kadgi, Deputy Mayor Rabin Baldev Singh, Professor Gauricharan, Professor Vinod Subramaniam, Professor Brijlal, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say how happy I am that such a wonderful conference is taking place here in the city of The Hague. And I would truly like to congratulate the main organizers of this event, the Lala Rukh Foundation, the International Institute of Social Sciences of Erasmus University, the Fry University and the Lala Rukh Chair. And I'm truly delighted that there are scholars who have come from all over the world, from Australia, from Singapore, to come and be part of this conference. I think Netherlands is also truly special in terms of this nature of diaspora studies, and I do not know if such conferences have been held in the past, but I'm very happy that Fry University has this chair instituted by the Lala Rukh Foundation. Netherlands has world-class universities which can bring a lot of academic rigor and interesting perspectives. The title is very well chosen: challenging perspectives, challenging prevailing ideas as well as looking for new ideas. And Netherlands has a significant and a very interesting, very complex diaspora, I think, which itself provides a lot of material for study and for inquiry. And by basing such conferences in the Netherlands, you have an opportunity not only to look at the diaspora worldwide, but also to look in depth at the diaspora here in this country, as well as Suriname, to which a large majority is linked. So you have a lot of material locally available, and I think area which has been relatively under-researched. So there is great scope for a lot more research, a lot more studies, a lot more papers, and there is enormous benefit that you would bring through your studies to the world of knowledge, to the academic community across the world, as well as to people like us who are policy makers within the Government of India and within various governments, including the Netherlands, on highlighting some of the issues concerning the diaspora and guiding us on our path of making many of these policies. I'm sure most of the scholars here would be well aware of the Government of India's approach towards the Indian diaspora, but let me quickly just summarize it in a few sentences. The Indian government, ever since independence, has always had an extremely positive approach towards the Indian diaspora overall. As many of you would know, Mahatma Gandhi, a person who lived in South Africa for almost 23 or 24 years and did his entire the Satyagraha was invented in South Africa. His entire political experiments began in South Africa before he came back to India. So I think there are many who have very proudly said that Mahatma Gandhi was the first Pravasi, as we call it, the overseas Indian. And similarly, Jawaharlal Nehru, as well as many of his generation in the independence movement, lived abroad, studied abroad, were familiar with foreign countries. Nehru traveled extensively to various countries of the world, to both Western countries as well as the Soviet Union and East European countries, to see how the political systems worked there, came back. And the Indian National Congress also had a great long tradition of looking at international events, of expressing support to China, which was at the time under the colonization by Japan, and to speak about the liberation of people of developing countries in colonies across the world, far before India even got its independence. So the Indian nationalist movement always had a very strong international perspective. And beginning from that perspective, once India became independent, the government was very clear in its mind that the people from India who have traveled abroad, who lived abroad, some of them voluntarily, some of them taken as indentured labor, as in the case of Suriname, some who have subsequently gone in search of better economic opportunities. All of them are important to the government, to the country. All of them deserve special attention, and the government should do everything possible to keep them connected to India. And of course, a very important principle which the Indian government stands very closely with even today is that Prime Minister Nehru had clearly articulated there should never be any dual loyalties to overseas Indians. Their first loyalty is to the country of their citizenship. They should remain committed to their country in which they live in, while they are welcome to be culturally, emotionally, economically, and in terms of family ties connected to India. India never asks them to give up in any manner on their country of stay. The Prime Minister Nehru himself had very categorically stated that the first commitment should be to the country in which you live. And subsequently, the government has repeatedly reiterated to diaspora communities, to overseas Indians, wherever they live, that you must contribute to the society in which you live. You must respect the laws of the countries in which you live. You must support the governments and what they are trying to do, and work for the welfare of whoever is in the community around you. Irrespective of whether it is a wealthy or a prosperous country, or irrespective of whether it is a poor developing country. But there must be a commitment to the local community. So India has never seen itself as someone attracting supranational loyalties. First, commitment to citizen, then be connected with India, do whatever you can for India. But the big change or a big step forward was, I think, during the government of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when we started having the first big Pravasi Bharatiya conferences in India, which has been happening for almost every year since then, when large number of Pravasis from across the world are invited. The day chosen for the Pravasi conference is January 9th, the day Mahatma Gandhi returned to India from South Africa. And every year, the government discusses diaspora issues. People from across the world gather. Awards are given to the most eminent of diaspora members. We have Mr. Rabindra Baldev Singh, who is a winner of the Pravasi Saman Award in past years. And there are discussions, there are debates, and the government has been progressively trying to strengthen its policy and its approach towards the diaspora. And let me add that under the current government of Prime Minister Modi, this has been taken to an even higher level by the simple energy and attention that he has given to the diaspora wherever he has traveled. In the last 3 years plus, he has traveled extensively, but wherever he went, he has made it a point to reach out to the diaspora, to have large gatherings, to speak to them, to tell them about India's achievements. And along with it, as India has grown from strength to strength, as the process of economic liberalization started within India in the early 90s, as India touched 7% plus growth in the last 10 years, as Indian industry went global, with the Tatas have a presence here in the Netherlands. They are one of the largest steel makers in Europe. ArcelorMittal is one of the largest steel makers in Europe. Tata purchased Jaguar, and so many examples. As Indian industry went global, as India's economic strength started to grow, as more Indians started traveling, the visibility of India as well as Indians in the communities they lived progressively increased. I would just like to mention the India-US nuclear deal as being a very major landmark in terms of the involvement of the Indian community in the US in helping India engage with the US government and to get the nuclear deal passed through the Congress. There was a huge effort which was made. Both the US government and the Indian government wanted the nuclear deal to go through, but there was a lot of resistance within the Congress. And so both governments, but in particular Indian government, worked closely with Indian community members across the US to meet local congressmen, to meet local senators, to lobby with them, and to ensure that the nuclear deal passed through the Congress. So it was one example, one outstanding example of how the Indian government was able to work closely with the Indian community across the US to get a policy legislation passed, which both the governments of the two countries favored. And while we have prime ministers of Indian origin in many countries, in Portugal right now we have a prime minister of Indian origin. In Mauritius we have had always prime ministers or presidents of Indian origin. So we have had political leaders in many parts of the world. And UK has always had a big political presence of Indians in the parliament, but the India-US nuclear deal truly stands out as a classic example of collective lobbying supported by the Indian government and the US government, where the Indian community played a big role. So I come back from the nuclear deal back to the Netherlands, where I would say that I've been here for a limited period of less than 4 months, but in my 4 months I've already seen how the diaspora here is very different from the diaspora anywhere else in the world. I have in the past lived and worked in the United States, where we have a very strong and powerful diaspora, as I just now mentioned, over 2 million strong, well educated, amongst the largest economic earners, everyone having very important influence in their local communities. There is no Diwali function today, I think, which happens anywhere in the US without local congressmen or local political leaders belonging to other communities coming and being part. Both the Indian community has learned that it is important to have these political leaders as part of their activities, and the political leaders have learned that the Indian community can be a source of votes, can be a source of funding, and they represent cultural diversity at its best, and that they come from a background of tolerance, pluralism, human rights, democracy, rule of law, all of which conform to US values. But the other posting where I have had occasion to interact extensively with the diaspora was when I was Consul General of India in Dubai. The UAE is a country where there is over 2 million Indians who live there, but almost all of them are Indian citizens. And because of the proximity of the Gulf to India and the close family and economic ties, they remain very closely integrated with India. They are a huge force for the good for India. There are many people who went as very poor people to the Gulf as workers. Today are multimillionaires. They have opened big business establishments in the Gulf and now are returning to invest in India. And many of them, by virtue of knowledge of Arabic, by virtue of having business partners in the local leaders, are very influential in the local government, and they are always ready and willing to help the Indian government in its various tasks of improving relations. So to come back to the diaspora here, I think the big dilemma has been that out of around 235,000 people that we would have of Indian origin altogether in the Netherlands, around 35,000 are from India, and almost 2 lakh are people of Indian origin who have come from Suriname. And traditionally, these communities have not mixed. And I've heard, I think there is an idealist view and there is a realist view. And the two proponents are sitting next to each other. But let me say that the idealist view is, look, there are numbers. The 35,000 strong from India include some very prominent businessmen, the best of Indian IT professionals, engineers, financial experts, chartered accountants. So if we can combine the numbers, if we can combine the monetary clout that Indian business has today abroad, and there are over 200 Indian companies here in the Netherlands, roughly the same number that the Dutch companies are of Dutch companies that are there in India. So if we can combine the numbers, if we can combine the money, if we can combine the brains, we should be a very big force here in this community. While the realistic view, which opposes that, I think, is to say, no, the two communities can never mix. Their history is completely different. They speak different languages. Their psychology is different. Their thinking is different. And it is impossible to bring them together. The twain shall never meet is, I think, the counter argument to the idealist view. And caught in between, I think the reality is, and in a way it is a sad reality, in many ways the Indians in Netherlands are seen as the invisible community. I met a very prominent political leader, the mayor of a major city here, and he said, I have only one complaint against your community, that is, you are invisible. You are not to be seen. You are too low profile. And why is it that we are so low profile? I think there are many friends I have in the Indian community here who look at the Moroccans or the Turks with envy at the kind of profile they have within Netherlands, the kind of presence they have in virtually all fields of activity. Not much. Okay, there might be a negative side to it also, but there is a huge positive side in terms of political presence, in terms of presence in the parliament, in terms of presence in business leadership, in sports, in entertainment industry, which the Indian community here has not been able to achieve till now. And also in terms of forging unity amongst the community and translating it into political results. It is very difficult to find one umbrella, one organization which brings all Indians together and which can truly mobilize and motivate these people to work collectively for the interest of the community as a whole, or for a longer term project of India-Netherlands relations for better economic and business ties. And I wonder here, and I have wondered, I think by the end of my term here, I shall probably write a paper. Please have this conference every year, and before I leave, I promise you I shall present a paper on how my interaction with this community has been, and it is indeed the most complex of my challenges, the challenges that I have seen before. I think the US community and the people in Dubai were very easy compared to Netherlands. I wonder if there is something, a new term, there's the term psychology of the colonized. Can we say psychology of the double displaced? The people whose ancestors went from India to Suriname, and then from Suriname they came here. Because truly, it is very difficult to understand and to figure out what all goes through those minds and how they perceive themselves in society. To a large extent, the indentured labor were taken, some forcibly, some voluntarily, some because of poverty. But I'm sure, and some it is said that they were told Suriname is a land of gold and they are all going to come back to India with bags full of gold. But they went, and then they were forced to eke out a new living. And then after several generations of living there, Suriname attained independence. And then there was this large movement. 1975 was the first big movement to the Netherlands. And then in 1980, when a military coup took place, a second big movement happened towards Netherlands. So first you are forcibly taken, or you are not entirely voluntarily taken. Then you live in a completely strange land, which again, Suriname is a fascinating ethnic mix of different communities. And then from there, 75, out of caused by whatever fears you had of local rule, independence was not seen as a welcome gesture, but a time to go to the original colonial master. And then when the military coup happened, probably it reconfirmed the fears of most people. And then when they come to the Netherlands, they do find a system which offers a lot of freedom, a system which is a democracy, a system where there is rule of law. But you are a very small minority with a perception that there are hundreds of glass barriers which prevent the minorities from moving up the economic and social ladder as fast as the predominant community in this country is concerned. So I think the psychology is certainly something worth studying, and the psychology and its impact on the community as a whole. And today what happens is there is an older generation which is probably more comfortable in Dutch and Hindi, but there is a new younger generation coming up which has been born here, who speak good English and Dutch, whose links with Suriname are not that strong, who in a way are unfamiliar and not very clear as to how they should relate to the Suriname of today and whether they really want to relate to the Suriname of today. And in between, we have us from the Indian government telling everybody, please connect to India. India is the land of economic opportunity. Come do your business in India, take your OCI cards, come and study in India, work in India, travel in India. So all these conflicting pulls and pressures are working on the predominant diaspora here. And let me just mention one more word. I also wonder, as part of this questioning or inquiring about this psychology of the double displays, what contributes to this very low profile character of the community? If in India a child grows up listening to stories of the independence movement, he grows up listening to stories of Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru and how India fought for independence. India fought in a very unique manner and wrested independence from the hands of the British. So it's a huge success story. And then you have the economic rise, fastest growing economy in the world, booming country, large population, IT success story, biotechnology success story, industrial giant. So there are a lot of positive reinforcement which happens to Indian children from their childhood. So when they grow up, they get jobs. When they come out, they come with a lot of confidence and sometimes, I think, a dangerous level of arrogance or ultra-nationalism. But they come very gung-ho. And they are not embarrassed about India anymore, today's India. Once upon a time, maybe we were worried about the snake charmers and the Mother Teresa image. But today, the people who come out have a very positive image of India, and India is one of the most optimistic societies in the world. Most people feel that their lives are getting better and will continue to become better. So, but here, if we need to get the Indian community to become more high profile, to get more involved in politics, to get more involved in social and economic activities, to be present in all walks of life, I think there is need to put a lot of more confidence in them. There is need to encourage them to, there's need to create a positive narrative and instill it in the community so that they can flower to the true extent of their genuine potential. And they can contribute not just to this country, but to their own families, to all societies to which they are linked, whether in Suriname or India, and to the whole world. I wish all of you very useful and successful deliberations. And on my part, I would like to put forward a proposal which is in public, which is that if the Lala Rukh Foundation, if all the organizers can come together and create a photo exhibition on the Suriname diaspora, on the Indian diaspora in Netherlands, I would be very happy to try and get the government of India to support it, and so that we have some kind of a permanent memorial which tells the story of the Indian diaspora coming here. I have already met the Director of National Archives here. They are just now having a wonderful exhibition on the East India Company. But I told him that it will be wonderful if the National Archives can cooperate with us so we can try and see who all can partner us in this effort. But I think this is an initiative worth taking. We should have a good visual record which can travel around the country, which anybody can visit anytime, and we can all access. And we need a lot more research, a lot more publications. I hope that will happen in the coming days. The Embassy of India and the Government of India stand ready to extend every support possible to this wonderful initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Mr. Baldev Singh, the Deputy Mayor of The Hague, is with us. He will provide us with an opening speech later on. But first, I would like to invite Inge Hutte, Director of ISS, to say a couple of welcome remarks to us. Inge.
Thank you very much. A very warm welcome to all of you here in the International Institute of Social Studies of Erasmus University in Rotterdam. So you come at a very nice moment. Also, I think a very fitting topic to discuss, the diaspora, in an institute of ISS. So we were established indeed in 1952, the post-colonial period, to train first administrative cadre from developing countries, as it was called then. And slowly we developed a master program in development studies and a PhD program in development studies. So we're moving more to the academic side of it. Each year we have about 170 students, and they come from more than 50 different countries in the world. Up to now, Asia is predominantly there, Indonesia, India also, of course. Also other Asian countries, African countries, and Latin America. So more than 90% of our students, I think even more than 95% of our students are from the Global South. Also our PhD researchers, a bit more of researchers from Europe and US, but also predominantly from the Global South. And how we teach our students, they come from more than 60 different countries altogether. We teach them, and we think of teachers, of course, as teachers, that they learn mostly from us. But actually, after 16 months, they say, no, we learn from you, but we learn most of all from each other. Because we're teaching, we're presenting our knowledge, we're presenting and sharing our concepts and theories, But then all the students are providing their perspective from their own country. So they get really a world view on development issues, social change issues. And I think that's very specific of our approach. What our alumni also say, we had an alumni meeting 2 weeks ago, and they said, no, what we learned, we first start, we have a problem, and we discuss it from all the different perspectives, from all different cultural backgrounds, and then we come to a conclusion. When they started to work, they said, no, then we found out it's not like that. But we want to do that. So we say beforehand, we're first going to share all our views, and then we're going to see what is the right common purpose that we want to share. So I like that very much. I think it's a very nice example. Every day I bike from Scheveningen to the institute, and the moment I step in, I always feel like I'm entering the world. And some people call us also the mini United Nations. So I hope you enjoy these 3 days, also our environment, meeting people, also students, PhD researchers, staff, not only from India, but also from other countries in the world. And in the world we have more than 13,000 alumni and different positions, more than 150 countries. So we're almost covering all, let's say. So I'm very proud to be director of the institute. I'm here now for 2 years, and it's a real great global institute. In our research, we focus on a critical social science perspective on global development and social justice, and it's especially global development. We are known for a lot of research and teaching in the global south. But increasingly we also say, well, our expertise is equally important here in the Netherlands and in The Hague and in Rotterdam and in Europe. So we're focusing much more on global development, sharing expertise from the global south to the global north, which is very much possible and interesting. And then the social justice component is very important. That has been with us from the very start in 1952, and we keep on doing that. Social justice, equality, equity in the world is our key value. And we do it now more through academic work, before more on capacity building short courses, but now through academic work. So the societal relevance of our research is highly important. So we're not only focusing on academic outcome, peer-reviewed articles, PhD research, but also what does it bring to society. So a conference like this, well, fits ISS very nicely. And I'm very happy that you're here, that we are working together with the Free University, with the Stichting Lalarook, the municipality of The Hague. And I'm very curious about what the workshop will bring. From a more personal level, I'm going and coming to India since 30 years. So you can't see it from the outside, but deep in my heart I have an Indian part. So I'm very curious to hear the stories, to learn a lot about the diaspora, learn also about the diaspora from Suriname and the Indian diaspora here, also in the different countries where, for example, you come from. And I hope you have a very wonderful time. Enjoy it, take everything out of it, and have a very good time. Thank you very much.
The next speaker gives me an opportunity to touch on a couple of things of the Lalarook Foundation. One is that the drive to create that foundation and the academic chair was our wish to kind of do a more systematic studies on the history of the Indian diaspora to Suriname. We were very happy that we eventually landed at the VU University in an environment which has this background of history and research, which provided us with a good environment to establish this chair. So it is with great pleasure that I invite the Rector Magnificus of the VU University, Vinod Subramaniam, to say a couple of words to us. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I will not speak very long. It is my privilege as the Rector Magnificus of the Vrije Universiteit to also add a few words of welcome to you. Obviously in this wonderful building of the Institute for International Institute for Social Studies. It's my first time here. It's really imposing. My university is proud to host the Lalarook Academic Chair in our Faculty of Humanities. And the chair was, as Rajendra pointed out, was established to study the history and the impact of the Indian migration from India to Suriname and then further to the Netherlands. And the first holder of the chair is sitting right there, Professor Chandrasen Chuni, and he has made invaluable contributions to researching and documenting the history and the extended migration of this particular community of the Indian diaspora, because the diaspora is obviously bigger, but this is a very specific subset of that. And using, among others, the technique of oral history, which is absolutely fascinating, because some of these things are not documented. Yeah? And so the way you document it is to talk to your grandmothers and sort of, listen to the stories and then try to put them down. And his successor, and the current holder of the chair, Ruben Gauricharan, looks to the future, if you will, and to the social developments and the economic contributions of this diaspora to the Netherlands. Now, that's only a part of what he does. He does a great deal, many other things. Yeah? But as we know, the Indian diaspora, and particularly the diaspora that has links to Suriname, is prominently present in Dutch society, yeah? And has made significant contributions to the increasingly multicultural and nature of the modern-day Netherlands. And in fact, the deputy mayor of The Hague, Rabin Baldev Singh here, is the perfect example of that contribution to the Dutch community. And I see Ram Ramlal sitting in the back there. That is also an individual who has meant a great deal for the community. And there are many others. And Ruben's work focuses on this diaspora and on the cohesion of multicultural democracies, the economic potential of the community, and on the integration of these ethnic groups in Western societies, such as in the Netherlands. And that, I think, is a fascinating area of study. It is one that has not been academically touched upon in this country in any case. And I think as a university, we are very proud that we are able to support and be a part of that. Ruben is also, of course, one of the co-organizers of this global conference, which seeks these challenging perspectives, which is new perspectives, but also challenging existing perspectives. And I think, the ambassador pointed out that this diaspora appears to be less visible. Now, that is one of the perspectives I think that one could challenge, but you could also try to see if you can make that more visible in this. I would argue that we're actually quite visible. We have made a lot of contributions. But there's more to do. And I think that this conference contributes to that. These challenging perspectives that we are trying to address and discuss today are also very congruent with the ambitions that the chair, the Lalaroop chair, has for the coming 5 years. And that is a wonderful future perspective to keep in mind as we discuss the matters in the next 3 days. Let me then end on that note and wish all of you an inspiring conference and thoughtful discussions, because I think those are incredibly necessary in this time of somewhat polarized discussions that we tend to have over a great number of issues. And I think the thoughtfulness, which I expect will happen from this community, will contribute to a civilized discourse. Thank you very much.
Introducing the next speaker is always a pleasure and an honor. And I today want to kind of also do some public acknowledgement. Mr. Rabin Baldev Singh, for those who are not living in the Netherlands and meet him first, is the deputy mayor of The Hague, but also a person who has a multi-face in a positive way in terms of his abilities. He's not only a screwed and very skilled politician, but also he's an artist. He is someone who is very into the Suriname culture. He published a lot of poems and even a couple of books and stories. And most of all, he is a supporter of us, of the Indian Diaspora, the Suriname community in the Netherlands, and also for the activities of the Lalaroop chair, for which we are very, very grateful, Mr. Baldev Singh. thank you for what you are doing, because you are, I think, as was mentioned before by also Vinod, an example of how our community can contribute to the society and do it in a thoughtful and a visible way, and acceptable and a pleasant way. So with these words, Mr. Baldewsing, may I invite you to address us and give us your opening speech.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. Great to be here. And I take indeed pride in the fact that the Lalarook Foundation has chosen The Hague to be the venue place of this conference. And I would like to acknowledge the presence, of course, of directors Inge Hutter and Mr. Subramaniam. Great that you're here. And of course, our international speakers. It is wonderful to host you all in The Hague. The Hague, ladies and gentlemen, being the international city of peace and justice, very much focusing not only the challenges which lay ahead here in this municipality, but also being a connecting point of the challenges abroad, being, of course, the second United Nations city since we are the legal capital of the world. Yeah, the legal seat is within our boundaries. So it is a challenging year or years which we have had previously, but which are coming up because of the fact that Europe is facing lots of challenges as far as, for example, the whole refugee crisis is concerned. So on that aspect, it is important not only to focus inward as far as the municipality is concerned, but also to look around us and see how we can help, of course, the world in a better, in a good direction. But that is a very hard task to do, since, in my humble opinion, Europe has a huge problem, and the problem of Europe is indeed the lack of confidence. And I think what we're doing right now is throwing away, assets which we had as Europe from 1789 onwards, the French Revolution, the age of reason, raison d'être, which gave us indeed the concept of brotherhood, of liberty, of solidarity. And I think that is another changing aspect which we are facing. But another thing which we are facing right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that The Hague indeed has changed as far as not only the stratification is concerned, but also as far as demography is concerned. And that means, I'm about to leave office. I will leave office in March next year as deputy mayor. I have to move on also, but I've been active as deputy mayor for almost 12 years here in this beautiful city, and I've been active in politics for 20 years, and I have seen that The Hague has changed as far as the demography is concerned. When I started, the percentage of migrants in our city was 38%, and now it's 54%. So the vast majority of this city has a migrant background. Of course, I'm counting also people coming from European countries, so that means especially from the Eastern European countries. But if you subtract that, then it's 51%, so still the majority. And if you look at youngsters in our city, then it is indeed 56%. So the city has changed, and that is because of the migration which we've had. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, that the diaspora community is huge. Not only the diaspora as far as the Indians are concerned, but also as far as the Mediterranean groups are concerned, it is massive. And that makes it actually also a very pleasant city, because of the fact that, diversity, as we see it here in The Hague, is not a weakness. It is a strength which we use to build our city and to move forward. And I think that that is indeed what I hope that this conference will give us. The ambassador said something about what Nehru said. Of course, what we have in our DNA as Indians is the Doha, which we have from the Ramayana, which say, Jahan base wahan sundar desu, pratipal karhi naresu. So, Jahan base wahan sundar desu, pratipal karhi naresu. So, actually giving us the fact that where you lay your head, there is your home. And that is exactly the inspiration which actually from the starting point of our lives we have had, and we have to move on with that aspect. But there is another aspect which has come to us actually, and which is written very eloquently by the Suriname poet Jit Narain. And he said, Din ke hum kaam kari, raat ke dekhi sapna, aja ke surat lage thora thora apna. And it goes, Din ke hum kaam kari, raat ke dekhi sapna, to aja ke surat lage thora thora apna. So during the day, I work hard, but then in the evening, I always dream. Actually, the figure I am is the figure which my grandparents were. So I am reflected what the history have made of me. So I'm very much like, you know, those who left India, came to Suriname and via Suriname to the Netherlands. And that is also in our DNA. And that is good that we're exploring that today here at that conference in this city, because I don't know whether you know it or not, but The Hague has indeed the largest Indian diaspora community in mainland Europe. So I'm not counting the United Kingdom, of course. We're not counting Kingdom at all after Brexit, so no problem. So we take pride in that, you know, that this is the masala capital of Europe, and that is good. So that's why I'm very anxious to hear from you and to learn from you what you've brought as knowledge for us. And that is actually what The Hague is all about, to learn, to inspire each other, to share history, because one thing is very sure, that wherever you are, we really share something. And that is not only the Indianness as such, we're connected. We're connected because the masala, yeah, we are masala, actually. So the masala is in us. Have a great conference. Thank you very much. And before leaving the stage, I would like to salute two people for their efforts they did, you know, to make this conference possible. And that is indeed Professor Ruben Gauricharan. He worked very hard on this topic, on the leadership, of course, of Rajinder Kharge. So I would like to ask you to give them a round of applause for their efforts. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Mois Rahiyo Ja.